Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to Good Measure. My name is David, and I'll be your host today. Today we have Jonathan Liu, third-year student and Viteri Fellow at the University of Southern California and co-founder of Schej. He's here today to talk with us about Schej and computer science in general. Jonathan, thank you for being here with us today. Do you mind quickly introducing yourself to those in the audience who may not be familiar with you and your work?
Yeah, sure. So as David said, I'm a third year at USC studying computer science, and I've interned at a few startups in the past, Intel, and I've also done some research with a professor at USC. But I think what I'm most passionate about are my side projects. So Sketch actually did start as a side project. And along those lines, I really enjoy doing hackathons as well, because I think hackathons are a really great way to create a really cool project in a short time span and see where it goes. So yeah, I've worked on many projects in the past, attending many hackathons, won first place at some of those. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here and be talking to you guys.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. Could you explain a bit to the audience before we really dive deep into a bit about what and explain a bit about what Sketch is and what it does, and how does it differ from similar platforms?
Yeah, sure. So Sketch is basically how I would describe it is a platform that allows you to find a time to meet among a group of people. So existing platforms already do this, such as When to Meet and Let Us Meet. Those are our main competitors. But what differs us mainly is our Google Calendar integration, because we've used these platforms before. They try to find a time to meet among a group of people. And when using When to Meet, when using Let Us Meet, it's just so hard to mark your availability manually, especially when I put all of my events that I go to on Google Calendar. So being able to have Google Calendar right there overlaid on top of the calendar makes it really easy to fill out your availability. And we also automatically do it for you. So that's our
Mm-hmm.
main difference that we make, is that we have Google Calendar
Yeah.
integration.
Well, awesome. Could you elaborate a bit on the specific technologies and frameworks that are actually used to build Sketch and how they're chosen for the task?
Yeah, sure. So for our front end, we use a framework called the Vue, VUE, and for our back end, we use something called Go for our web server, as well as MongoDB for our database. So as for each of these choices, Vue as our front end, my co-founder and I, we're just most familiar with Vue, and we really do not like React, which is the other predominant web framework that most people use, because we just think Vue is much easier to use. It organizes your code much better. And overall, we're just more familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
As for our server, using Go, Go is more performance than, say, Node.js,
Yeah.
which a lot of people use for web servers as well. But
Mm-hmm.
mainly why we use Go is actually because the hackathon we submitted Sketch for was a Go hackathon. So we were like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, hey, no better time to start learning Go. So we started using Go. We found it pretty cool and just ended up continuing to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, for our database, we use MongoDB, which is a non-relational database. So if you've heard of SQL, that's a relational database. We
Mm-hmm.
chose for a non-relational database because, especially when you're trying to work fast and getting a product out there, you're making a lot of changes to how data is stored.
Mm-hmm.
And a non-relational database is good because it really easily allows you to change the structure of data without having to create a whole new database or create a bunch of new tables. And so we can quickly add fields, remove fields as necessary without having to do a lot of overhead.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'm hearing a lot about like the back end and about different platforms. How exactly does Sketch handle scalability and sort of ensure the reliance of performance for a potentially high volume of users and appointments?
Yeah, sure. So scalability, of course, is a big thing you want to consider when your website or app starts getting more users. And to be honest, we didn't really think about scalability that much when first creating it, because we just wanted to get a product out there as quickly as possible. But we do
Mm-hmm.
use AWS as our hosting platform, Amazon Web Services, which
Mm-hmm.
makes it really easy to basically have scalability out of the box. If you
Mm-hmm.
need more resources, just pay a little bit more and you can get those resources. So we didn't really have to worry about scalability as much because we can just have AWS do that for us.
Oh, okay. And I heard you talk a little bit earlier about sort of your integration with Google Calendars. Are there any other integrations or partnerships that Sketch has with tools, other tools or platforms in the scheduling or productivity space?
Right. So as of now, we do not. Our main partnership or the main platform that we connect with is Google Calendar.
Mm-hmm.
So you have so we connect with Google Calendar to be able to see those events. I guess the only other thing we do have is the Google sign-in capability, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically built in with the Google Calendar API. You sign in with Google, and it gives us access basically to your Google Calendar. So as of currently, that's our main integration.
Okay. Awesome. Well, um, as Sketch is like one of your new products, could you describe your process for sort of gathering and incorporating user feedback and suggestions into your sort of roadmap and sort of plans for the future for Sketch?
Yeah, sure. So right now, Schej is live. Anybody can access this at Schej.it. That's Schej.it. And so how we go about gathering feedback right now is when we first launched, I actually met up with people one on one and said, "Hey, I'm working on a cool project. Check it out." I had them test it out in front of me and give me feedback. And
Mm-hmm.
I asked questions in a way that um, made it so that they didn't try to sugarcoat their answers and
Mm-hmm.
instead give me real honest feedback about, hey, is this something you would use? How would you use it? How would you envision using it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to, from those user interviews, from actually testing it out and seeing what people struggled with when using the
Mm-hmm.
app, I was able to incorporate that and bring up to the team, hey, this feature is not really intuitive. How can we make it better?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we started out, just going one on one, going to people and seeing how they actually used it in a real life setting.
Mm-hmm.
And now, then after that, we made a bunch of changes and we were like, I think we're ready for a bigger audience. So then we
Yeah.
advertised on LinkedIn, got a bunch of users, and now we have a feedback form right on
Mm-hmm.
Sketch. And through that feedback form, people can just submit any feedback they have and we'll get back to them. And we've already gotten some pretty valuable feedback from just that feedback form,
Mm-hmm.
and we've implemented changes incrementally ever since.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about suggestions and sort of improving on your product all the time, what were some of like the biggest lessons that you've learned from developing Sketch?
Yes. So one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that uh, in the end, what really matters is what the users want. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how innovative you think your idea is. If nobody wants your product, it doesn't matter. It will just go down into the ground. So at the very beginning, we initially actually wanted to make a mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
We had a whole schedule sharing system built out where you could friend people on the app and see their schedules. And after we created sort of like a prototype of that on Figma, we went around and started talking to people and interviewing them. But we realized that nobody would actually use this.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody actually wanted this. Nobody needed this. So
Mm-hmm.
after we heard that feedback, we were like, maybe we should just dial it back, make it much simpler. And from the user interviews that we did, we found out what
Mm-hmm.
people actually wanted, which was an efficient way to just find when people are available.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why we transitioned to the website idea and made it
Mm-hmm.
much more simple and ended up launching that. So in the end, I would say just being able to do user interviews, finding out what people actually need,
Mm-hmm.
and incorporate that into your plan moving forward.
That's so interesting. And speaking about sort of like just like improving on the product, right? How do you sort of see Sketch evolving into the future, and what are your plans for its growth and development?
Yes. So right now, since we just released a few weeks ago, what we're currently focusing on is marketing. How do we
Mm-hmm.
get brand awareness? Because right now nobody knows about Sketch. So of course, first we did our LinkedIn post saying to our connections, "Hey, this is a cool project I've been working on. Check it out. Give us any feedback." So that was our initial marketing strategy. Now we're looking at avenues such as Reddit, Instagram, Google Ads, as well as product hunts, and
Mm-hmm.
getting more awareness. Because in the end, what we're trying to do is basically steal the users over from when to meet. Because through doing our preliminary research, we found that when to meet,
Mm-hmm.
the platform people usually use to find the time to meet
Yeah.
has a monthly user accounts of around, I think it was 4 million users.
Mm-hmm.
And just from ad revenues alone, that can give you close to $500,000 just from that traffic. So
Mm-hmm.
we just want to first show that our platform is much better and try to convert users to
Mm-hmm.
start using Schej rather than when to
Yeah.
meet. And then after that, we're going to monetize, of course, plus place ads on it. But other than that, I don't think really right now Schedge is really really scalable. As in,
Mm-hmm.
there's not much else we can do with it. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
scheduling platform, and we think we're gonna just leave it at that. We're just gonna
Mm-hmm.
put ads on it and then move on to the next project because I'm always looking for new projects to start.
That sounds really interesting. I remember you talking earlier about sort of the internships and work that you've done with professors. I was wondering, how have your experiences working these internships and doing a research project with professors helped you on a project such as Sketch?
Yeah. So honestly, in my experience, I feel like that's um or so I might be a special case, but I actually think that it was my projects that I was more passionate about
Mm-hmm.
at first and still am because the skills that I've learned doing my projects have been much more applicable than whatever I was doing at Intel, whatever I was doing in my research. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just much easier to have something you're passionate about and work on that. Because
Yeah.
all these projects I was making, they were all like ideas my friends and I came up with, and we were like, hey, that's something cool.
Mm-hmm.
That should exist. So we just made it and made something cool out of it. Whereas doing the internship, I was just doing some really trivial work at Intel, making like a logging system or whatever that I didn't really find valuable. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really feel like had much impact. So I don't think I really learned that many skills from doing my internship, from doing research with my professor, and that the most valuable stuff that I've learned has been actually doing my own projects, taking
Mm-hmm.
initiative to create something by myself.
Mm. That sounds great. And speaking about learning, as someone who's currently going through a CS program in college, what recommendations would you give to incoming CS students? And what do you think they can do before entering college to prepare for it and make their lives as not as stressful going into this those first 2 years, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the biggest pieces of advice is know why you want to do CS.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know a lot of people who at USC who only want to do CS because they think they'll get a high paying job.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think if that's your mindset, that's totally fine, but it will make it more difficult for you
Mm-hmm.
because your only motivation is money. If you're not really interested in the subject, I think it makes it much harder to learn. So I think that's the first piece of advice I would give. Know why
Mm-hmm.
you're doing CS and find another reason other than just it pays well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because if you can find like something that interests you about CS, maybe like I really like video games. I think it's really cool to make my own video game. Maybe that's your reason,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
will carry you through. That will motivate you to get through the hard classes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice: what you can do now. So CS is pretty unique in that's all you need to have in order to do CS or learn CS is a laptop. You don't need anything else. A lot of other things you need, like materials, you need preparation, but no, CS, all you need is your laptop and the internet. So I would recommend high school students, if you're interested in CS, to just pull up a tutorial on how to program in Python or something like that, to just get a head start, learn the basics of programming, because that's something you can really easily do nowadays. Just pull up a YouTube tutorial and start taking that initiative.
Well, awesome. That's it for all the questions I have. Do you have any last words, anything that you want to plug before we end today?
Yeah, I guess one last thing is just Schej is live at Schej.it. If you ever want to check it out, if you ever find it a hassle to find the time to meet among your peers. And yeah, it's live. HTTPS Schej.it, SCHEJ.IT. We're always looking for new users, and we think it can help make your life more efficient.
Well, thank you.